Well, welcome everybody back to the Real Play Podcast. This is Ciera.
And hi, it's Ebony.
And today we have Miss Kimberly. Kimberly is here. We are excited because she is about to drop some gems on us in this conversation. So, Kimberly, tell the people a little bit about yourself real quick.
Okay, well, I am from Jonesboro, Georgia. I just recently graduated with my master's in African American Studies from Georgia.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I am what I essentially do is I look at women's history and particularly Black women's history. And my thesis was actually on Freaknik and Black women's experiences at Freaknik. So it was quite interesting what I learned and what I uncovered. And I hope that project continues as I look to complete a PhD. But right now I'm just an activist and an educator in Clayton County. Just trying to bring some light and knowledge to our children and to the community overall.
So I love research. So at the end, we got to circle back around to this Freaknik because I was too young. We got to.
I would, if y'all know some people that I can talk to, I would love to talk to them. And for the people who's listening, my goal will be a part of this. If you know some people who's been to Freaknik and would love to share their story, men and women, I would love to talk to them.
Go ahead right now, since you talked about it. If they've been to Freaknik or know somebody, tell them how to reach out to you. Like, do you want them to email? How can they get to you?
So pretty much it can be on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. My Facebook is just Kimberly Oglesby, last name Oglesby. My Twitter and Instagram handles are _KLoves. That's KAYELUVS. So that's the same for Instagram and Twitter. And also you can email me as well. It's just my first and last name at gmail.com.
Yes. So y'all, if y'all been to it, if you've experienced it, let Kimberly know. Okay. She's got some papers she trying to write. She trying to, do some research, help a sister out. But we will definitely go back to that before this episode is over. Okay. Because we want to know. I want to know. Ebony wants to know. The listeners, we want to know. Okay. So the reason why I asked you to come on, because I knew that you just graduated with your degree. And with it being June, we know that June is not only Black Music History Month, but it's also Juneteenth happens midway through the month. So I wanted to bring you on so we can talk a little bit about Juneteenth, kind of educate people on what it means, what it is, and why we should always remember it and celebrate it. So starting off, can you tell us what is the significance of Juneteenth?
Okay.
Oh, no, actually, this is a good question. What day is Juneteenth? Because some people don't realize the actual date, what it is. So let's start with that first.
So Juneteenth is June 19th.
Yes. Say it again.
19th. Okay. That is the day that is commemorate what essentially Juneteenth is it commemorates the official ending of slavery. And I would say slavery in the southern states, because let me be clear here. The Emancipation Proclamation freed slaves in the South,
right?
Not in the North. So on June 19th, 1865, there were still slaves in the United States. And I want to say enslaved people, because when we say slaves, we're taking away their humanity and forgetting that they were actually people. So I want to say enslaved people. They were still in the North. Like Maryland, I believe, was considered like a union state. So they still had enslaved people there. So I would like for us to keep that in mind, that the emancipation did not just end slavery. The 13th Amendment did, which was December 1865. But what Juneteenth commemorates is the Union soldiers coming into Texas and Galveston, Texas, and saying, Emancipation Proclamation, all enslaved people are free. So, yeah.
I have one question. So I was looking this up, and they also call it, I guess, the Jubilee celebration, but they call that, it's the same thing with the Emancipation Proclamation. They call that night the night of the Jubilee, like watch night. And I didn't know that was the same thing that churches use until I went to the African American Museum and I started looking at it. I was with one of my friends and I'm like, oh, I recognize this. This is from church. But it's so funny that I'd never made the connection between the two.
Yeah, actually, the celebrations of Juneteenth have changed over time. It's very huge in Galveston, Texas, and pretty much it's just like people get together, they do prayer, they do barbecue, they do dancing and things like that. And then as those people, probably move to other areas, they carried on that tradition, and it looked different in different places. So it may have been called a Jubilee Day, with the church, or just a family getting together and praising. And so that is very possible, actually. And a lot of people don't know that it comes from Juneteenth celebrations.
Because it's interesting, they took the we often do like watch night, like for New Year's. So they kind of took the stigma, or didn't say like this is for us, being freed. They just kind of said, okay, we're watching to the new year. But I wish someone would like sit down and explain like we're celebrating the new year, but also the fact that we've been free for X amount of years. I think that would be helpful.
Right.
I would say to that, part of it could be that the ancestors who experienced enslavement didn't speak to their children so much about what they experienced and what different things meant. And part of that was pain, like it was, slavery was hard. I can't imagine have gone through.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so to talk about those horrors, for some people, it was better to not speak about it. And then, with public schools not talking about it, with, parents not knowing the knowledge from their grandparents, there was a few who knew, but it wasn't, like everybody. So I would say it is a struggle to make sure that our children, our adults, are being taught Black history. Like, that is so important, because we need to know what these things mean and where it comes from. But unfortunately, it's a lot of pain that comes with it. It's a lot of records that are gone, or have been destroyed, or just didn't exist at all. And so really, for our tradition, and when I say our, I mean African American communities, ours really come from oral, and that comes straight from Africa. Like, we are an oral people, and once that lineage or practice is halted because of the pain, a lot of history is lost.
So two things, sorry. So one is, with oral communication, y'all play telephone. So, things are passed down, but and we will make a story. We will come up with something and twist it to something else. So, it's kind of hard, because I was thinking the other day, like, how do we actually look up and see if something is factual? Some of our history, we don't know. We just have to rely on what someone else is saying. So that was one thing I want to bring up. And then the second thing is about the pain that you said. As you were talking, I just thought about like trauma in the Black community. That's not what we're talking about today, but just about the unwillingness to share or be vulnerable with your family members, friends. It's hard, because then you stifle the rest of the generations after you, because how can we have that same transparency or know all of this knowledge if we're not given that opportunity? I mean, there's conversations. I mean, I was young when my grandparents died, but I wish I would have been able to have with my grandparents, or conversations I can even have with my parents. If you even try to go back and talk to your parents nowadays, it's kind of like that. I don't want to talk about that. So.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think a part of it just has to do with like, it was hard to be Black in America. Okay.
It is hard. Correction.
Even right now,
to be Black in America.
Like, I gotta figure out how to put food on this table. You want me to talk about how hard it was when I was a little kid? I don't want to talk about that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so, and then at the same time, like, Black people weren't allowed to be vulnerable. They weren't allowed to talk about their feelings, even amongst each other. Church may have been a place where people talked and congregated and things like that, but when you put in that religion piece and God, it's really like pressed hard on you, and then what personally may be going on may sometimes get a little lost,
You can't go in the church all the time and give all your personal business, because then you're looked at and now you're called a sinner and you need to repent. And
church comes with respectability politics, and you have to act a certain way, look a certain way, talk a certain way. So that's the thing with church. And so it was just, we need to talk more. But it's just what it is. We need to talk more. We need to talk and work in trying to heal those wounds, because it's in us.
Do you think by you said, you know, for church we have to act a certain way, be a certain way. Do you think we have to do that as a African American community, and how does that kind of affect us?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There are absolutely standards or like invisible things that Black people have to do in order to be accepted in other places and even in our own spaces, you know. Because let me say this, not just because we have the same skin color don't mean you on my level, or you're on the same mission as me, you know. Because like that respectability piece was very important in terms of trying to get those resources to get beyond where Black people were being pressed at. So there was this idea of looking a certain way, acting a certain way, presenting yourself a certain way, and it exists today, especially in the workforce. And I'm seeing some stories of children being told that they can't wear their dreads or their hair has to be a certain way for them to graduate or for them to go to school. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, this is my natural hair and my natural hair is not accepted. That's nothing but respectability politics. So it is definitely still very wild and apparent today.
Yeah, I asked that question because one, I mean, we as adults, I'm pretty sure feel the weight of that. And then I was just in therapy and my therapist asked me, how can you bring your full self, or how can you show your full self to people? And I'm like, can I? I know I can't do it at work. I can be me, but a fraction of me, right? Within moderation. And then even with, outside of work in certain environments, do I want to bring my full self to every single environment, right? Because can you take the totality of me? Can you really sit and, like, it's kind of this thing where we have this thing where a lot of us don't know how to be vulnerable, or we're working through some of that trauma and some of the things that we've gone through. So if I show up as my full self and you don't accept me, does that take me back to being in my shell and not being able to, and then to caveat to this, right? We don't know ourselves as far as a people. So can we really show up as our true self?
You get deep.
Sorry, thought process.
Oh, true. And I could just think of an example, like my best friend. She is Bahamian, right? And she moved here when she was in middle school, and you know, she went to UGA, which is basically a white supremacist school. That's their
white supremacist school.
Okay.
Oh my.
Wait. Historically, a white supremacist school. Okay. That's what I will say. So I don't know how they are right now. I'm just gonna say historically. All right. Okay. So, you know,
allegedly.
So she was around in that environment. And I remember her very first day, or not her first day, but I remember her calling me and being like, Kimberly, I cannot believe, like, they called on me, asking me, like, what was the Black experience about this, that. And I was just so upset. And I was just like, yeah, girl. Like,
I'm in there.
This is what I've been trying to tell you. And now she's in Connecticut, you know, in this mostly white predominant insurance company, and she's finding that she has to show certain parts of her, certain parts to get different things. And even though they may be passive aggressive and some of the things that they may say, you know, she can't show up fully as herself. And we talk about that a lot, and she tells me her struggles, and I'm like, girl, I can't do that. Like, I can't. Not with my Black self. I can't. I don't know how for all those Black people out there who are in white spaces and have to be in those spaces in order to live, like, kudos to you, because it is hard. From what she tells me, it is hard. So absolutely.
And then we need to, and this is the last one I'll make, Ciera, but we need to be able to create spaces for Black people, you know, on how they can show up as their full self. Like, come to this event and we can discuss. There's events, right? There's tons of events if you look on Instagram, but all of them aren't the same. They are this false narrative of a woman empowerment event, right? And not really rooted in, I really want us all to connect, to be able to learn, to show up as our full self. Maybe even if I get a business, be able to give out jobs to people who've been in these situations where they couldn't show up as their full self. And then even to teach and reach back, which is one of the points of this podcast, is to be able to show different people in different spaces, you know, because if you can't see it, you can't be it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I know that, and that's one of the things that I really have been trying to do, at least in my community, is really get us to talk, connect more, and stop looking at the outside for resources. Like, we have plenty of resources here, you know? Why do we need to go other places to get validation? We need to validate ourselves because we have the resources here. We have the people here. Let's connect here and, you know, just
and guess who are trendsetters?
We can do that. We don't need anybody else.
Right.
You know?
Correct.
I want to take it back 1 second because I could feel the passion, Kimberly, as you're talking. What made you decide that you wanted to go for a degree in this area? Like, you wanted to study our history. What drove you to that? Because you got a passion. I can hear it in everything you're saying. I just want to know, what one day did you just wake up and say, you know what, I love my people. I want to study my people. I want to share the information. I want to empower us. Like, what was it?
Well, let me say this. One of the things, have you ever heard of Black feminism? Black feminism is basically the Black woman's version of feminism, because feminism tends to, you know, focus on white women's experiences, you know, so they made their own, you know.
We made our own. Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And one of their mantras is personal is political. And that is literally it explains me so well in terms of why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I went to Georgia State, and I'm be 100% disclosure. I didn't want to go to Georgia State. I wanted to go to Spelman. That's where I wanted to go. I wanted to be a Spelmanite. That's where I wanted to go. But of course, you know, we didn't have the money. So I ended up going to Georgia State, and, you know, I'm just taking the regular basic classes. And finally, the spring semester comes around, and I'm able to, choose my own classes, because Georgia State had this thing where they was putting like freshmen in cohorts. So everybody had the same classes together.
Right.
And I saw this African American history class. I was like, oh, let me take that. No problem. And I met amazing historian, Dr. Maurice Hobson. And I tell you, I was just blown away every day. Every day I came to class, I was just learning something new. And I was just like, why wasn't I taught this in school? Like, I went to a predominantly Black school system. This stuff was not talked about, from minstrel shows to Sweet Auburn, I could just so much stuff was just not talked about when I was in school. And I've always loved history. I like all subjects, but history has always just had like a special place in my heart. And so after taking his class, I would go visit his office. And at the time I was a psych major. I thought I was going to be a psychiatrist, but the psychology class I had it was okay. It wasn't bad, but that class really just ignited something in me. And I was just like, I want to learn more. And Dr. Hobson, he was just like, Black history, it's not going to make you feel good. This isn't for the lighthearted. Like, this is for real stuff. And I'm like, I'm with you. Like, I'm hearing what you're saying, but because I realized that because I didn't know this stuff, and that meant my community didn't know this stuff.
Right.
And I was just like, I remember my friends used to get tired of me talking about stuff I would learn, because I would just be like, it's so important, and we don't know this stuff. And it just progressed on from there. I just stayed in that department, and they eventually was just like, become a major. And ever since I became a major with that department, I was happy. I loved going to class. I learned so many different things, and I never left history because, my degree is in African American studies. So that means, I can be a social scientist, and I actually know how to do research and things like that. But I chose to specifically keep with history because it's so important. And I love storytelling. I love, I worked at the Apex Museum in Atlanta. It's really the only Black history museum in Atlanta that specifically talks about Sweet Auburn. And while working there, I loved being able to tell what I knew to kids, to adults, to elders, and I learned stuff from them. Like, it was just so great. And so that's really where my passion comes from. It's just that corroboration or corroboree. Sorry if I'm not saying that right. But just of us talking and coming together and teaching and filling in that gap that is not taught in public schools. That's really where my passion comes from.
I love that. Sometimes it really only takes one person, like one really good teacher, one facilitator, instructor, whatever you want to call them, to bring that passion in a person. And now that it's in you, and you over here sharing it with your friends who are they probably half like, man, why is she always talking? But they're hearing it, right?
Right. Exactly.
And they're going to go back and they're going to say it some other time. So you're helping spread this knowledge just from a passion that you have. So kudos to you and to Dr. You said Hobbs?
Dr. Hobson. Dr. Hobson.
Yes, thank you to him, because look, he done did some things in you. No,
he don't know what he done started yet. He know a little bit. My whole department, they know a little bit of what's gonna come about, but they have no idea.
They not ready yet. So I know you know a lot about Atlanta history.
Yes, I do.
So Atlanta is like, the second Black Mecca. We up here in Chocolate City right now. So this is like number one. Atlanta, y'all don't do that. Atlanta, y'all try to be at our level. Y'all try to all move down there.
I don't know about that, but okay.
So I want you to tell me, or tell us, teach us, inform us on one of the biggest unknown facts about Black history in Atlanta.
Okay. So I've mentioned Sweet Auburn before.
Right.
And the reason why I keep mentioning it is because it's not known by a lot of people.
Right.
There's a restaurant in Atlanta called Sweet Auburn, but you keep saying it, and that's the only thing I can think of.
No, it's not a restaurant. It's a whole strip, just like I know a lot of people when they talk about they talk a lot about Tulsa, the Black Wall Street, and which is great. There was probably several Black Wall Streets in the United States. But what's particular about Atlanta's Black Wall Street, it was called Sweet Auburn. And it was basically just, so let me start from the beginning. So after Reconstruction, right, you have Black folks, they're able to have jobs, they're able to own businesses, acquire land, different things like that. And Atlanta at this time, and Georgia in general, after the Civil War, they're trying to change their image because they want, and when I say they, I mean white people who are in control. They wanted Northern businesses to come down and invest in Georgia, invest in Atlanta. But, Northerners were like, well, we don't want to deal with that racial BS that y'all got going on down there, although they were just as racist.
Right.
So Atlanta in 1906, there was a race riot, and it was pretty huge. It went all the way to France on the French page news, like this race riot happened in Atlanta. And again, it started because if there was a supposed rape of a white woman by a Black male.
It's always the start
that way.
Why is that the same thing with the Black Wall Street? It's in Tulsa. It's
always.
You see what I'm saying? It's listen. So after that riot, there was like a Black elite class and also a white elite class, and they were like, listen, we want Northern businesses to come down. So let's just segregate. You got this area, we got this area, boom, boom. And so that's pretty much how Sweet Auburn is created. Black people were pushed in this one particular area on the southern east side of Atlanta. And That was the only place they could live, have businesses. And so when you're forced to be in one area and invest in one area, it becomes like it has to be successful.
Yeah, it flourishes.
It's the only drugstore that's around. It's the only entertainment that's around that you guys can go to. The only houses that, you know what I'm saying? So, and it's very similar to Tulsa. And the Greenwood district, same thing. You know, they were segregated and they invested in their one area. But what's different in between Tulsa and Sweet Auburn is, so Sweet Auburn was considered the richest Negro street in the world by 1959 because it had everything. I mean, from hotels to restaurants to popular clubs that like big top names like Gladys Knight and Duke Ellington. Sorry. You know, big musicians that would come down and they would go to Sweet Auburn. They would perform for the black audience at the Top Hat Club, now called the Royal Peacock Club. And then they will also perform at the Fox Theater for the white audiences, right? And it was just really huge. And Sweet Auburn, that term was really coined by John Wesley Dobbs, who was actually the maternal grandfather of Atlanta's first Black mayor, Maynard Jackson. So it's a lot of history in terms of Black elite in Atlanta and the influence that they had. But unlike Tulsa, what ended, if you will, or decimated Sweet Auburn was really desegregation. Once businesses were able to, you know, go to the Peachtree area or other areas in Atlanta, they moved. And not only that, in 1961, Atlanta or Georgia built the downtown connector. So they basically, if you look at a map of Atlanta and you look at our interstates, you will literally see that they put extra effort to go dead smack in the middle of Sweet Auburn and back up into middle to connect all of the interstates. It was literally deliberate. And I'm pretty sure that it has happened in other cities where interstates were deliberately put in between to divide Black neighborhoods. So not only was the downtown connector divided Sweet Auburn, but it also the desegregation, people were moving away, thousands of people because of the connector, thousands of Black families were displaced. And so pretty much just people left Sweet Auburn. And now there have been projects to revitalize it. And I will just honestly say, as I know what's going on in DC, gentrified. It's being gentrified. And it doesn't look how it was or used to be. So, you know, you mentioned the restaurant. Yeah, there's a Sweet Auburn restaurant. And that's great. There's a Sweet Auburn Curve Market that's been there for quite a while. But it's just the Oddfellows building is still there. You know, it's some important structures that's still there, but they look different. They're not what they were anymore. So for example, the Atlanta Life Insurance Company, started by Alonzo Herndon. He was the Atlanta's first Black millionaire. Huge insurance company, big thing for Atlanta and the Black community. That building that stands there, its original building is basically abandoned. And then the one that's right next to it is owned by Georgia State.
Okay.
Yeah, it's owned by Georgia State. Georgia State, I graduated from Georgia State, but at the end of the day, it's a gentrifier.
Right.
You know, the bank that would loan out money to Black people to start their businesses and things like that, it was called the Citizens Trust Bank. That building is now owned by Georgia State. That bank is no longer there.
I have a question for you. So we've all been to Atlanta, right? I've all lived in Atlanta at some point in life, right?
Right.
And so if you've never been to Atlanta before, you just think like it's this total Black Mecca and just overwhelmed by Black people. But in reality, there's so many white businesses, so many white people, so many nice white neighborhoods, but it's still segregated. Now that you're talking to me, I'm like, because there's the southeast side, there's still, you know, Black people are still mostly only on that side. A lot of their neighborhoods are being gentrified. What do you think it'll take for another Black Wall Street? Because we don't get the same privileges, right? They gentrify it. We do move in, but also a lot of white people move in as well. There's no Black quote unquote neighborhoods, nice ones that I've ran across, other than the ones that's run down, and it is, you can have that, right? Until we decide to come in and make it something better.
Right. What could create another Black Wall Street?
And can we?
I don't know. I don't know about that. That's a hard question.
I would say it would start with us. And when I say us, I mean the Black community, to stop looking for validation outside of ourselves, to continue to invest and reinvest in our people. Because one thing that I do know that I've heard oftentimes, you know, when you talk to an economist and a Black economist, and they say the African American dollar leaves the Black community faster than any other community out there. And it's honestly kind of true. Like, we don't invest in our Black businesses. You know, when we go to a Black owned business, we looking for a discount. It's like, okay, I mean, it's cute and all, but we gotta support them, you know. And I ain't even gonna lie, I'm gonna be truthful. You know, the prices do be steep. It's like, this, you know, I want to support you, but it's so expensive. But the problem with that is they don't have the resources like other companies who are able to sell their things at a cheaper price. You know, so it's just, we have to pull together, and it has to be a consensus amongst us all. And I think the issue with that being why that hasn't happened is people have different ideals as to what Black Americans should do to assimilate into American culture. You know, should we be our own subset, or should we, you know, just mix and mingle? That's been something that's been argued for centuries and centuries in my discipline, and it's difficult because a lot of people just have different ideas as to how Black people should come together and how we should identify ourselves in this country. And so that's really where the struggle is.
It's so sad to me. It's kind of like the Jews can do it, the whites can do it, but you others, you better not even try. Like, I feel like in this day and age, even if we try to build a Black Wall Street, they will burn it down for some reason. You know, they will find some way to come in, and either they won't burn it down, or they in the middle of it, they will divide us, because that's easier, right? I can turn you against you, or turn you against you, and then you can just do it yourself, and I can look like, oh, well, you know,
I didn't do nothing. You did it to yourself.
Exactly. And that's honestly what Atlanta kind of does when they deal with racial issues. Like, if you think about when MLK, I mean, he was born in this area, but when he was on the civil rights campaign, and he came to Atlanta to force, or to, you know, to make a protest and a public scene to get the news and stuff, to, you know, to watch what was going on, Atlanta didn't react how Alabama did. Because they were like, oh no, they come in here, but, you know, we don't want them. We don't want to desegregate, but we can't act crazy like how other places been happening, because we got businesses, we got people trying to come down and stuff. So we're just gonna quietly put them in the bus and take them on, and we're not even gonna fight. We're not gonna cause a big scene. Similar to what they did with Sweet Auburn, like they did subtle little things by building that highway, you know, displacing thousands of people, you know, putting higher taxes in that area. I mean, it's little subtle things that they do to destroy areas like that. And even now, like with gentrification, that's, you know, it looks great. You know, it's like, oh, this area is being revitalized. Yeah, but for somebody else, not for the people who's been living there for years, who have paid off their home, and now they can't even afford the taxes on the house. It's horrible. And so for me, it's a real struggle when we talk about gentrification, because it's like, I want our communities to look better. We should demand better. But at the same time, I shouldn't be pushed out of a community that I've lived in all my life. You know?
I agree.
So it's building another Black Wall Street. Is it possible? I don't know.
I would like to see a day where we can all come together and we can have our own. But I think it just takes a lot of education or relearning, learning, different business models. Just it's going to take work, and it's going to take us us as a generation to put in work and find those people who want to do the same things. Absolutely. As well.
Absolutely. And I think what I mentioned earlier about not all skin folk is your kin folk. Now I finally got the phrase right. So like my department put so much in me. I'm like, let it come out. But, yes, not all skin folk is kin folk. That is so true in Atlanta. I just, it's like that Black elite. They are there for themselves. They don't advocate for the Black underclass. And that's just the truth. I love Atlanta. People want to come here and like, oh, it's the Black Mecca, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, Black Mecca for some Black folks. Not every Black person. Yes, there's more opportunity than probably some other places, but it is still a struggle. And again, that respectability piece is a huge deal in Atlanta. And that's really why I looked at Freaknik in terms of my project, because it was a huge issue for the Black elite seeing their children, pretty much, because it was college students that started this, out in the street acting a whole mess. They was like, oh, no, this is not right. We got to do something about this.
You know what?
Had some sort of merit, but there was a respectability piece there.
You know what, too, is when you get to a certain level, you make a certain income, you see less and less and less of people that look like you. Now you're in the room with, it's either you or that other Black person in there that is invited. And so it's got to be you, right? And so I think it's that kind of, that happens for a day, then it happens for a week, and then it happens for a year, and that just becomes a part of you. And you're kind of like, well, but I guess it's also mindset, because you can pull in someone if you really wanted to and say, okay, well, you come along as well. I mean, it takes one of us to break down the door to bring the rest of them in. Y'all seen those TikTok videos? Dun, 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 like, come on.
Oh, yeah.
So, it just takes that. But I do want to go back to Freaknik. So
yeah, I was about to say, you just gave us like that was gonna transition right on in there. That's where we going next.
Segue, right?
Yes. So let's get to it.
I wasn't old enough, unfortunately. I think I would have gone, honestly, if I was old enough, just once, just to go see. I would have probably been on the outskirts, because it would have been a little too wild for me from what I heard about it. But I wanted an orange t-shirt that said Freaknik, because y'all know they used to have that. And I used to see like this lady that I would call my aunt. Her and her friends would come back with their orange t-shirts after the weekend and say how much fun they had. So
Freaknik. Okay. So, well, first let me say I was not old enough to go. I was born in 96.
Oh my God.
Of Freaknik pretty much in its decline, I would say, at 96. So I have no sort of memories of people telling me how Freaknik was. I honestly, where my interest came from was, so back to my college experience, I was experiencing a lot of sexual assault or sexual harassment by Black men, either on the street or on campus. Well, our campus is pretty much the street, but what I mean by that is, men who weren't in college and men who were going to my college. I was experiencing a lot of that, and I was experiencing like the party culture. And when you go to a party and it's just like guys just come and touch you, and it was just accepted. And I remember feeling so violated. I remember talking to my best friend who went to UGA, and I'm telling her about how I felt, and she was like, "Well, girl, what did you wear?" I'm like, what do you mean, what did I wear? Like, I wore what I wore. She's like, well, I mean, if you put on a skirt or a dress, you kind of need to expect that. And I was like,
no.
What? Like, I had to check my best friend. Like, wait a minute, that's not okay. Like, just because I'm wearing a skirt or a dress, it's an invitation to touch on me at a party. No, and then what really was a straw for me was on campus party. We have this thing at Georgia State called the Panther Proud. It happens twice in a school year. And I went to that and I was already feeling antsy about parties. And so I had on jeans. Okay. And you know how people, when they're, at a party, there's like people are centered around in the middle. It's like a big old circle. Everybody's close together in the middle. And then you have like the outskirts. I'm standing on the outskirts. And, the Greeks doing their lines and stuff. And coming out of the, the big circle. And I'm not going to say what organization he was from.
I already can. Yeah.
I'm not gonna say which organization he was from, but he walked around. He was very prominent on campus. He walked behind me, literally grabbed both
and
of
bit
my
you.
butt cheeks, and was like, I like that, and kept walking. And I was just like,
what?
I was like, that was the last straw. I walked out of the party. And walked back to my dorm by myself. I didn't feel like I didn't feel like I could tell my friends, because I felt like they would just be like, oh, well, girl, it's just blah, 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 or that was such and such. He's, and I'm like, and like, I'm wearing jeans. Why y'all touching me? So with that experience, and then trying to figure out what I wanted to study, what I wanted to do my master's on, I knew I wanted to do Atlanta. Pretty much all of my work in undergrad has been centered around Atlanta. From the gentrification in Atlanta to Sweet Auburn to, I've always had a focus on Atlanta. And I heard about Freaknik, and I, went on YouTube one day and I was seeing videos, and I was horrified. I was like, oh my God, like, I could not have gone, because the way the women were being touched, and I was like, I would have been terrified to go to something like that. But as I we got into my master's program, I really was like, I want to know, how did those Black women navigate that space? Because I'm still trying to figure it out. How did they do it? Because I would not have gone. I would not have went. I would have been like, y'all got it. How did those women, go and enjoy it? Because today, if you talk to anybody who went to Freaknik, and women, they'd be like, oh, Freaknik was dead. They're happy. And I'm just like, okay, but how did you navigate this space? And so that's pretty much what my project talks about. I interviewed 7 women and 5 men, just due to the amount of time I wasn't able to interview a lot of people. But the few that I did, out of all the women that I talked to, one of them was actually sexually assaulted, and the others were not, for other reasons, like they were in a group, or they were older, different things like that. So Freaknik actually started in 1983. On the
I didn't know it was that old.
On the AUC campus. Pretty much, I don't want to say it began with the Greeks, but I'm pretty sure they were in a club called the DC Metro Club.